Good afternoon. And for those of you I haven't had the chance yet to meet, I'm Angela Boudreau. I'm the Executive Officer of the St. John Real Estate Board. First question I want to ask is, do you need to be here? Just to make sure I'm not wasting your time. This session is for members who do not already load their own listings. So these members have never or have rarely ever entered their new listing data into Matrix. So they submit data sheets to the board, or maybe they let their admin staff at their office do their data entry. So as of February 1st, next week, the board will discontinue the service of listing loading for all members. From that point on, members can either load their own listings, or they can delegate this task to an assistant, to a team member, or to admin staff at their office. Loading has not changed, though. So I'm not here today to offer you any new or significantly different instruction for those who already know how to load their own listings. So if you already load your own listings, you can wave goodbye and sign off the call, or if you like, you can stay on and see if you can pick up a few tips that I'm going to offer. I want to get everyone out within the hour, so we're going to stick very closely to the topic today. I'll invite your questions at the end to speed things along and keep things going at a momentum. But if at any point I say something that's unclear or that you want to figure out a little more in detail, please don't hesitate to stop me and unmute yourself with your unmute button and speak up. Or you can choose, if you prefer, to type a question in the chat, and we'll deal with it as soon as I notice it. So that's all I wanted to say by way of opening remarks. So maybe just figure out where your mute button is if you need to unmute yourself as we go along. So getting started now, you figured out if you should be here. The next thing we want to talk about is, why are we all here? Well, the memo that was sent out to all members on December 13th, and it was sent out to Northern, St. John and Valley members, because the St. John Real Estate Board serves all the members in Northern and Valley as well. So that memo on December 13 described in detail the Board of Directors' decision for the board office to stop data loading. So I'll refer you to that for the detail and the official word from the Board of Directors. If you need another copy, please let me know after the session and I'll forward it to you again. In summary and in general though, the reason that we're making this change is to improve our data quality. So the moment a listing is activated, it uploads to realtor.ca within the hour, and sometimes a lot faster than that. So currently, the board requires only a single photo at the time of activation and any text, a couple of words in the overview. So that means when the listing uploads with that single photo and a 2-word overview, the public is seeing that as the listing's first impression. A listing with minimal data is a poor reflection on our professionalism. So the Board of Directors look closely at ways to increase the minimum number of words or photos that go along with the listing. But after some research, we concluded that those items have to be part of the listing before it is activated. So sure, those things could be sent into the board, a pile of extra photos and a longer overview. But we also noted from our research that it's inefficient and redundant for the board office to retype a long overview that you've already typed out once, or to repeat the steps to download photos from an email that you've uploaded to the email, and then we're going to upload them into Matrix. That's 3 more steps than the time it would have taken you to upload them from your computer directly to the listing once. So after a lot of discussion and consideration, directors determined that the St. John Real Estate Board will modernize its data entry efforts to be in step with many other boards across the country and move to a member load model. So this puts the board staff in the role of quality assurance. So you're going to carefully enter your listings, and we're going to carefully review them and edit them to ensure a better product is activated and ultimately uploaded to realtor.ca and all the third-party destinations it heads to after realtor.ca. So board staff are also going to continue to enter amendments, solds, cancellations, and withdrawals for St. John, Northern, and Valley. So let's get started. The first thing I want to show, and I hope everybody can see my matrix screen nice and bright here, is under the help menu. When you first log into the system, there's a drop-down menu that is under your name. Here you'll find Help. Under the Help menu, there's an index and a number of resources appear immediately here on the left side. One of these is video tutorials. When I click on that, I'll see a number of different videos, but the one that we're going to focus on today, the topic, is input. So if you click on that, you'll see that there is a matrix input instructional video on YouTube that you can watch. The one difference between this video and what I'm going to present today is that today's session is going to focus on our customized specific version of matrix. It looks like our system. It is our system. This video is a generic out-of-the-box CoreLogic matrix product that doesn't look and feel exactly like our system. So we're doing the live training so that we can operate our system. But if you want refreshed training, not only are we recording this session today, and we'll post it for members as a link under board messages in Matrix, there's also forever this video that is a Matrix produced input video of instruction. It'll be a little different, like I said, but you can come back here and it'll help refresh your memory on the things that we covered today. The next thing I want to show you, going back to the same drop-down menu under your name, are settings. Here, there are team settings. If you click on team settings, you'll see that you have an opportunity to create a team. This is where you're going to extend permissions to somebody else who might be on your team as a fellow realtor or somebody who works for your team in an administrative capacity. So you can extend the privilege to that person to operate either as impersonating you, that's one option, or to work on your behalf. I see somebody has unmuted. Does somebody have a question? Just going to mute everybody again. Okay, we'll keep everybody on mute just in case the background noise can be distracting because we have so many people on the call. But if you have a question, definitely unmute yourself and just say, Angela, and speak right up and interrupt me. So within these team settings, all you have to do is click here to create a team. You would enter that team member's user ID. In St. John, that would be their S number. In Northern, it's an NN number. Valley just uses names, but you would enter that, hit find, and enter them. As I had said before, there are two ways that they can join your team. One, you have an option to let them impersonate you, and the other, you have an option for them to work on your behalf. The difference is the seamlessness. So when they are impersonating you, any emails that they send from the system are going to appear as though in every respect they came from you. So any contacts that respond to those emails in response will go into your inbox. So in every respect, if you took a vacation and you had somebody operating as impersonating you, they would still think you're busy working at your desk. However, maybe you're not comfortable with that level of impersonation. So in that case, you would choose working on your behalf. Then if that person sends an email out to one of your clients, they can still access your client list when they're operating on your behalf. But those emails will go to the client on behalf of the realtor with the name of the assistant. Any responses to those emails will go into the inbox of the assistant in their system, and that they can operate. So it depends how you want to set your business up and how you want to make it work. So that's a choice that only you can make, but that's where you find it. And if you need any more information about that, definitely give me a call afterwards. Let's get into the loading though. That's what we're really here to do. So on the toolbar here, you're going to hit input. That's where we're going to input a new listing. So in this case, we're going to add new. You may already be familiar with the fact that there's edit existing and all your existing listings are here for a quick modify and a drop down. But we're going to add a new one. Then we're presented with the choices of all the different types of property that we can add into Matrix: residential, multifamily, land, farm, and commercial. Since most of what we do is residential, that is what I'm going to demonstrate today. Now, this gives you an opportunity to choose from a cross property, to add it from a new cross property listing. What that means is if I want to fill from a cross property, that means I have an MLS number from a listing that is either similar. For example, if you have multiple land lots and you don't want to fill in every field all over again, or it's exactly the same and it's two categories. For example, if you have the residential version of it in, and now you want to create a multifamily version or a farm and a residential. So what it'll do when you put that MLS number in there is it will fill in all the fields that are common from each listing. And all you have to do is fill in the rest. So it'll auto-populate everything that it can and leave the rest to you to complete the listing. There's only two ways that you can do that though. If the listing is currently active and it's yours, and you can be one of the listing agents on it if there's a team of people that are all listed, as long as your number, if you're one of the listing people, you can use that listing to auto-populate, or if it was your listing in the past. But you can't use somebody else's listing, even if they had the listing prior, to populate a listing for yourself. So in this case, though, we're going to start with a blank listing because that's what we're here to do and learn. When this screen opens, there's two things I want you to notice immediately. Well, first is some of these fields are yellow, and that means that those are the fields that have to be filled in as a bare minimum. They're mandatory fields. The next thing I want you to notice, for residential, there's not just one tab, there's two. These go through each page of the two-page residential input. It's like both sides of your form when you were using the old paper residential data input form that you filled out by hand or in web forms. So the first thing I want to tell you, this is probably one of the key tips you're going to get today and one of the most important things to remember. Even though it looks tempting to start your listing up here in the top left-hand corner, don't do it. Scroll down to right about here, halfway down the page, where the list agent and list salesperson info is. The reason for this is because once you get adding things into this listing, you may get distracted from your task. So you might have just finished typing a big 1,500 character overview and filling in a lot of data, and then your phone rings or someone comes into your office or something just happens and you neglect the listing and your system has timed out, and then your listing is lost if you haven't put your salesperson number in immediately. The moment you put your salesperson number in, it becomes an incomplete listing that you can access anytime from your homepage. So that is my S number today for the purpose of this training session. As soon as you've got your number in there, you hit refresh. It takes you back up. Every time you refresh the page, it takes you back to the top. So I go down to make sure that it took, otherwise it didn't, and it's not going to be saved. So there you can see my information is all populated in there. So refreshing grabs your information from the system, and now you can see that this is properly assigned to me. I wouldn't bother going in and putting everybody else yet if there's other people on your team that will be co-listing with you. Just as long as the person who's entering it has got at least one in there, you'll be able to get at it later if the system times out. So now that we've got that, we're going to head back to the top of the screen and get started with entering the listing. The first thing to note is the PID. This field has to be 8 characters, no more, no less. So if you have a PID with less than that, make sure you preface it with 0 or zeros. Additional PIDs can be put in this field. If you have more than one, separate them with a comma. And the same thing goes for the PAN number. It's got to be 8 digits. So preface it with a 0 if necessary. Civic number is just the number on the building. I'm going to put the board's office address in here. Any unit numbers would go after. I'm pretending that the board office address is a residential property for the purpose of today. When we get to the street name, it's important to note that only the street name goes in here, not the type. The type is next to it here in a drop-down menu. You see they're in alphabetical order, avenue through way. So I can choose road from here. Now there's two ways of navigating through the fields on this form. You can either use your mouse and click on the drop-downs like I have, or once you get speed with this happens to speed things along a little bit once you get good at it, you just simply tab through each field. The one benefit of tabbing through each field is that it's going to systematically take you from one field to the next, so you won't miss any. So that is a bit of an advantage. The other thing is you can tab, and remember I showed you the drop down, you can choose the road from the list, or if you know that it starts with an R, all of these are linked to the first letter that they are. So I can just type in an R and I get road. Well, what if it's crescent? You see that there's a few different choices. If I want crescent, I get circle first, but I just keep hitting C and it cycles through all the C options. This works like any other web form that you would input online. It's not specific to matrix, but that's two options or ways of filling it in. Postal code, even though this field, you might not think it's important because it has more to do with postage. You think, well, I'm not mailing something, I'm listing a property. Don't be fooled. That little field is very, very important when it comes to geocoding, which creates it to be properly mapped in the system and appear in the right spot on realtor.ca. So you must not only have the correct postal code, but you want to have it in uppercase for the letters with a little space between. It must be formatted in that way to be properly looked at with the mapping technology. So again, I can tab through the sections or I can use my mouse. Dropping down the district box. This is one I do suggest you have a good look at. This is the biggest box here so far for having to choose the district because it's got all of the districts for Fredericton, St. John, Northern, and Valley. So once you choose your selection from here, the sub-district and municipality will narrow down based on the district you've selected. So those ones are a lot less gigantic than this one. But maybe it's easy to notice, this might help, that the first handful, the first 4 of these are Fredericton's districts. The next 3 belong to Northern, and then St. John's kind of stick out a little because they've got all the bracket numbers behind them. And then the final few belong to our Valley board. So that might help you to quickly at least figure out from this big list where you're going. So in this case, it's North. You're going to fill in the side of the road information if you have it, and exposure if you have it. Sub-district, as I said, this now narrows down to just the 2 that relate to my district, and it's Milledgeville. And then my municipality is narrowed right down to St. John because that is the municipality that corresponds to the sub-district. So now that I have my property address fully and completely in place, scroll over here, and you may or may not be scrolling when you're in matrix, and that depends how far zoomed in your screen is, and that is done on a Windows computer with Control+. So if you want to get the full screen, you can have a look that way. If your eyes are getting aged like mine, I like to have it a little bit bigger, so then I end up scrolling over. I also want it big for the purpose of the demo today. So I have a little map here that is obviously not here. This is just a little thumbnail of someplace down in the States that they use as a placeholder. So now that I've got my address in place, don't miss this step. This is important. Hit Update Map. Again, Update Map is like another one of those refresh. So it always, every refresh takes you to the top left of the screen again. So I'm going to come back over here to my map. And whew, this is good news. It looks like it's mapped properly. I know where the board office is, and it is right beside the university and the hospital, right in the middle there. So that's good. But what if it wasn't? What if it didn't properly map? Well, the first thing I suggest that you check is the address. Did you enter something incorrectly? Maybe I missed a 0 on my civic number, or maybe I added an extra 0. Is my postal code correct? Well, I can quickly open up canadapost.ca and check the postal code. You can enter an address and get the postal code within seconds to make sure it's accurate. And so let's say I've made a few changes to my address. Maybe I put the word Crescent in here, and look, I did leave it at Crescent. Maybe that's going to confuse things because it's actually road. Luckily, that didn't affect it, but if it did. So once I've got things changed and fixed, I'm going to say, well, let's get that latitude and longitude, the lat long, from the address. Try it again, please, system. So now I see, well, good, it fixed it. Or what if it didn't? So if it didn't fix it, this is your next option. Well, either you check the address again and try it again and keep tweaking it until you think that maybe you've got a typo. But if you're certain it's correct, but the map isn't, the next thing you want to do is set your lat long manually. When that is hit, you end up with a little pop-up that has the, just want to zoom that up so you can see the whole thing. It has the map on it showing where the pin is right now. So it could be that maybe it's just slightly incorrect and you want to move it to the other side of the street. Maybe you want to move it a little further up, a little further down. So that's it. That's easy to tweak and move. But what if it's in the wrong section of the city altogether? Or what if it's somewhere else in the province, a different city altogether? Or sometimes when they improperly map in Canada, you get thrown to the geo center of Canada is Reindeer Lake, Manitoba. Uh-oh, well, that's either you can zoom out indefinitely. This is going to take you forever to try to get to the spot where you find your map pin, where the map pin should go. So what I suggest, the quickest thing to do is make one of these jump to selections, because that'll jump you to at least in the neck of the woods where you want to be. And there's a bunch of locations around the province that are strategically placed around New Brunswick that will get you closer. And then zooming in and zooming out, again, tweaking until you get it exactly where you want it. And it's just a matter of picking up and dropping the pin and then hitting done when it's completed. So I'm totally happy with my map. Everything's great. Here's another tip that a lot of members don't do, which I highly recommend, is to choose your Google Street View. This is what will show in Matrix when somebody wants to have a quick look at what the outside of that house looks like from Google Maps. Well, right now, when I open it up, I'm literally getting the street view, and that's not a very good presentation of the property. So what I can do here, this operates as Google Maps because it is Google Maps. I just put my cursor down on it, click, drag, drag, drag. So I can go fast, slow, up, down, look at the sky, so you're just essentially moving with your mouse until you get it where you want it. And these, of course, as you know, go up and down the road. So maybe I'm about happy with it. Right about like that, I can see a nice straight on view of my property with the sign there. And you can even scroll in. Oh, it's a little too much. Scroll out. Do whatever you want to do to get it looking exactly as you like, and then hit OK. That means the next time somebody looks at the Google Street View for your listing, that's what they're going to see, what you chose. So that's a good tip, because literally, even though it's called Google Street View, we're not selling streets. We want to have them looking at the property. So now remember, as we're going through, make sure you choose the school, make sure you choose all kinds of information. You'll see that these fields are not mandatory. They're not yellow. But buyers, as you all know, want the most data about a property that they can get their hands on. So you want to click and complete as much as you can. Well, this not only helps the buyer have a more complete picture, but it makes you as the professional, and therefore us as the profession, look like we're a fountain of complete and accurate information. And that's what we are, what we want to be. And that's the image we want to portray. So we're going to fill in as much as we can. The lot size, let's say, I wanted you to know about this field, that this is only a number field. It used to be a number text mix. It's been changed to a numeric only so that it can be searchable later by any other member. So the number goes there, and then the lot size units is here. So remember, I'm using my mouse, but I could also just now that I'm on that field, hit tab to go to the next field, put in any zoning information, tab. This water frontage, yes or no? Here's another tip. This is the most important field on the page, probably, arguably, if your property is waterfront. Don't miss it. So we do obviously miss it a lot if the property isn't waterfront, and that's fine. But if it is, don't miss it, because a huge number of members have clients just trying to find waterfront. And sometimes our system's a little tricky to actually make waterfront properties searchable. And that's because people are not clicking off the options in order to make it come up in that search. So this is one of them, and I'll show you another one on page 2 that is also equally as important. So make sure that's checked yes, if it is. Water frontage, this is an open text box. You might want to put anything in here from the size of the number of feet of length of waterfront, or any information about the waterfront that you want. The seller name, notice that the first name goes first and the last name goes last, and the company would be chosen if you just want to be able to put one company name, and then you don't have to fill in the seller last name, because if its company is selected to yes, that overrides the last name and you put the whole company in the first name. It's no, obviously, if it's not. Now, on a go forward basis, the board is going to be checking to make sure that the seller's first name is in full. Sometimes members in the past have just put an initial in here, and a new requirement will be that the full first name is there. You can have up to 4 sellers. Occupancy is a drop down, or again by tab and first initial of the word below, freehold. I know it's there. Any of those, right? So getting to the public remarks. For this field, this is the public information that will upload to realtor.ca. And after it leaves realtor.ca, dozens and dozens of other sites where it syndicates or aggregates out that are controlled by CREA's data distribution facility. So you want to make sure that this is beautifully written, that there's no grammar and spelling errors, obviously, but you also want to follow board rules in that you cannot mention yourself or your company or any other person or company or advertising in this box. This is about the property. So you can't say, call me Angela Boudreau, Grace Realtor. You can't say anything about you. All these properties are to be cooperatively and seamlessly marketed by all members. So that's why that can't be included in there. As you can see, we have 1,500 characters that we could use here. I'm going to show you here's an overview that is going to match the board's new requirement. We're starting off with just 100 characters as the minimum mandatory. What does that look like? Well, here, that's pretty darn close, 1401. So I'm just over by 1 character. If I took out the period or something, or there, then it would be, well, it's funny. Oh yeah, that's right. So there would be 1402 left. So if I put an extra period there, it's exactly 1400. That would be left. So what we want though is for you to have as long an overview as you can. Fill up the 1,500 characters as much as you can. If you're cutting and pasting from a Word document, just make sure that if it cuts off, that you notice where it cuts off. Some people just paste and don't realize that it's cut off because they've overextended the number of words that field will take. So this is all that 100 characters looks like. It's not a lot that we're starting out with to ask for. It's definitely a lot more than 2 words like new listing that we were having before. But as I said, we're encouraging you to put more, and likely this will be dialed up the more we gauge after February 1st, how members are using the field and if overviews are long enough and things. So the banner field, well, this field is basically like a headline in a newspaper. So it only takes 50 characters. So if I wanted to put something like that, really, that's the length exactly of 50 characters. So you wouldn't be able to put any more than that. So don't put a long flowery thing. Some people are putting their company name in that field, and they were asking if that's okay. I mean, to us, we prefer that any company information advertising goes in the fields where it is designated for that, like asking what the company name is and who's listing it. But the banner doesn't upload to any public sites at all. So unless we get complaints from members that it's appearing on a client view, which I don't think that it is, so members shouldn't be sending out Realtor View to their clients. So I don't think this banner has any bearing on any clients if you're using the right version of a cut sheet to send out to clients. French public remarks. Obviously you would paste or type any French remarks in that field. And then when anyone toggles between French and English, either in Matrix or on realtor.ca, they'll get one set of remarks or the other. If you prefer to have only French presentation for your listing, you can put the French remarks in both the public information and the French public remarks box. And obviously, if you don't have French remarks, leave it blank. So showing instruction, well, this field is private. It's for members only, and it does not upload to third-party sites. So items here could be, with the cat out. How about, this is a common one I see. Something like that. So also, I guess if the listing is a mere posting, if you're just posting it on behalf of the seller and then inviting all your fellow realtors to contact that seller directly for showing appointments and offers, that would go exactly in this field. You may or may not have the ability to do that. That's up to your company and it's their decision. So check with your manager if you're not sure. Now we're back down to where we started. So your number is already here because you smartly entered it as you began the listing, but you can also now at this point add up to 3 other realtors. So four in total can be on the listing. They all have to be licensed realtors. You can't put any assistant IDs in here. The next thing is list price. Now this field I want you to be really careful with. An extra digit or a missing digit can be disastrous. Now the board, obviously this is part of our quality assurance check, but since so many of our prices are 6 digits, I'll tell you what I do, especially when the 9s are so popular in our industry. What I do is my mind has a little trouble seeing, is that the right number of digits? I take my cursor and I pop it right in the middle between each set of 3, because this field doesn't take commas and won't accept them. So we can't actually put that, but that gives me a way to look to see that there's 3 digits on either side, so that I know that I haven't accidentally called it 59,999 or where's 5,000,000. Because then if we have to change the price after, it's awkward. It's already potentially uploaded with the very wrong price to realtor.ca. This likely won't happen because the board is going to quality check these before they go, but the best course is always to have it right out of the gate. So the possession, anything in here could be negotiable, is usually what I see here. Could be, some people put on closing, ASAP, 30 days, whatever you want to put. So text field is the bottom line. Assessment, again, this is another field that is numeric. So the same thing, I always take split second. These are fields like I gloss through and tab through and enter things quickly. These are fields I don't go quickly on this section, because this can spell a world of pain for anyone if things are incorrect. So I'll make sure I put my cursor. Yep, that looks right. My tax amount, that will take a decimal and cents. The tax year, put that in there. And this might be a good time to just let you know that when the new tax bills go out, that all the tax information for assessment, tax amount, and tax year will be updated in the system automatically for all listings. So you don't have to go in and update it. We have a handshake agreement with Service New Brunswick now that they will go in and flush the data out and fix all that for us. Somebody this morning made the good point though, like what if that's not the right tax amount, because we're going to subdivide the property after closing and get reassessed for taxes. Good point. So once the new taxes have been submitted to the system and you notice that, go back and fix any listings for which that is the case. Selling commission, I want you to know that this field is wide open, can hold a lot of text and numbers. And the reason is the Competition Bureau does not want anybody to make any predetermination about whether it's percentage, whether it's a dollar amount, whether it's any goods in trade or whatever it is, based on if it's a lease, the number of months. There can be any combination of things. The point being, there's no standard when it comes to commission. So as I've been doing this training, I am just putting a flat amount. And then I always put this as a joke, because I want you to just remember that anything can be typed in here. But you have to be really careful what you do put in there, because your company will be responsible for it. And also make sure that it is only the selling or cooperating portion of the commission. It's not the full commission that your company is collecting as the listing company. And we do see from time to time members accidentally, especially if they're new, putting the full amount in there accidentally, and that can be ugly. Again, one of the things the board will check for quality assurance when we're going through your listing. So easements and restrictions, very rarely used field. So usually this is a point where I'm using my mouse, because otherwise you're tabbing through each of those, and I come over here to sign. Do fill it in, of course, if any of this is applicable to your listing. Sign, whether or not there's electronic lockbox. And this is where I put the plug in that Northern and Valley members, if you don't have a key app yet on your phone and you want to get one, the board is now supplying those to the members that we serve in Northern and Valley. So just contact our office. It would be Jennifer that you would speak to, and we'll set that up for you, because we do recognize whether or not you want to use lock boxes. You are either accessing the ones in Fredericton and Moncton, or Fredericton and Moncton boards are hanging lock boxes in your jurisdictions if they're on your turf in your listings. So do make sure you have a key if you need it. Property condition statement, whether or not you have it or it's available, yes or no. Rental income, there's some options here that you can choose from. I leave that to your professional judgment. Again, land titles, this is a mandatory field, important information, either a yes or no. Garage, this is a redundant field, and you'll see on page 2, there's another garage, like from a drop down or pick list menu. But I do know that both fields are used fairly equally for searching on properties. So I encourage you strongly to fill them both out. And I'll show you the other one when we get there. So something about the garage and whether or not it's garage. Heating costs per year, up to you. It depends. You're probably going to get the phone call. If you want to circumvent that, you can put the information here. Beds above grade and beds below grade. Obviously, this is anything above the soil. If there are no beds below grade, you do have to put something in this box because it's mandatory. So we need to have a 0 in there. Same thing with baths, full and half. 0 if there's nothing. Year built, like some people will say, how come that field's not mandatory? That is one of the most important pieces of information about the property. Well, hang on, it is, but it isn't always. There is a year built description that is a companion field to that field. So with this drop-down menu, some of these choices will require a number to be filled in and some won't. And it's pretty intuitive. So for example, if I put 2018, but I'm not sure, I'm going to put approximate. And approximate means if you choose that, you definitely have to have some kind of number in here. What's approximate? But if you were to choose new, more than 100 years old, to be built, under construction, or unknown, you don't have to put a number in that field. There'd be no need for it because all of those don't require it. So, but updated and remodeled does. And if you make that choice, the year built, remember this, is still the year it was originally built. You're not putting in some sort of year that it was remodeled. You're just saying this is when it was originally built, but it has been updated and remodeled. And then any further details about that obviously would go in your overview. So in this case, I'll choose approximate. Above grade square footage. Now, this is obviously an important field. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to skip this field. And because at the end, I'm going to show you what happens if you miss a field, what happens with the listing. So as for the total square footage for the finished space, this is not a mandatory field right now, but we're getting more and more feedback that it is vital information. It appears on your CMAs as the field that's comparing apples to apples for properties. So it may be that it's something that becomes mandatory down the road, especially when you're going to be the one sitting in front of this and you're, oh, I can calculate that right now myself. So it's not involving the board having to stop the listing, contact you back and forth. Like you can make these changes on the fly now. It's your listing. So building dimensions, you can fill it in if you have them. That would just, it's a text field. So you put the number with an X between for the buy and the other number. Any condo fees, leased land fees, mini mobile information would go in any of these fields. So there, we have finished our first tab. We're going on to page 2. Here I will pause. Is there any questions, either for the chat or unmute yourself on anything that you've seen so far? Hearing and seeing none. Let's continue. Catch my notes up from where I was. So, okay, the next thing here on the second tab on page 2, the first thing underneath is rooms information, the room level, type, and room dimensions. So again, this is a spot where I really feel that I've used tab and the first letter button to my advantage when I'm picking up speed and trying to enter a listing. So here, first of all, let's have a look what's in here. Well, it's second, third, fourth, fifth, basement, and main. So obviously the key numbers 2, 3, 4, 5, a B or an M. The room types here, somebody pointed out this morning, and I'd never noticed this, sadly. These used to be in alphabetical order, and somehow with an update, they slipped because we've added different rooms. So when you start this February 1st, these will all be in alphabetical order. We want our house to be tidy before you guys start having to enter your own listings. So, but have a look at what's in there because these are the only selections that you can make. So, but any of those first letters will elicit that to come to the top of the list. And then your room dimensions are just going to be a number, X, the number. So let's give this a try 2 different ways. First, I'm going to try with the mouse. Room level, main. Room type, let's go foyer. And room dimensions, I'm going to do 8 by 10. Some people put the spaces in there and some people don't. It doesn't matter. It's a text field and whatever is written there will upload to realtor.ca. So then I hit more to get another one. And this time I'm going to use my tab and the key letter approach. So M for main. Now I want living room. Well, the first L, hit laundry. Hit L again, living room. And this time it's 14 by 15. tab, tab to hit more, and hit enter on more. So you can see this, rather than dragging the mouse all over through these, it's like driving an automatic versus driving a standard. You're not shifting that gear all the time. You're just smoothly going through it. So main floor, now I want to have K for kitchen, and maybe I want 18, 16, more. Main floor, family room, and 14 by 13, more. And then 2 for second floor. B, first one comes up as bathroom, hit B again, bedroom, 15 by 12, more. Let's go back to the mouse. Second floor, bedroom, and then 11 by 11, more. Maybe I want to do a basement. And then I want to put the family room, and then I want to put 14 by 14. And then I go, oh, whoops, I put the family room on the main floor. I didn't mean that. That should have been here, and I got the wrong measurement. I can delete that one, obviously. So that's all you do there. And it will take, somebody asked this morning what's the maximum number it will take. And I didn't know. I know that I think up to 15, I think. I just got a note that I just got a pop up that my internet connection is unstable. So I hope I didn't freeze. Am I still moving? Thumbs up, Frank. Am I still moving? Thank you. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. If I do freeze, don't panic, stay on, and I'll just get back as soon as I can. I'm hardwired. It should be good, but once in a while, these things happen. So there, moving into the type. There's only a few types for residential, either condo, cottage, or recreational. So that's a mandatory field. Here, I want you to notice this sale or lease. Most of our members totally ignore this, and I completely get that. Most of the time, who cares? What we're doing 90% of the time, probably 99, is selling residential listings. But if you do have a residential lease, this is such an important field to check off, because otherwise, how can anybody scour the system for a house to rent? So you could start to put more homes for renting if everybody uses that field, if it is a rental opportunity. So I don't really care if you check it off for sale only, but make sure you do check it off if it is for lease only. I'm going to check it off because I'm a good checker. I tend to want to fill in every field that I can. That's just the way my brain works. So maximum of 8 on this pick list. 2, check out these maximums because they are to be respected. If you accidentally go over them, at the end, the listing will give you an error message. Make sure that you do take advantage of filling it in up to the maximum if you can. Property size, this is a pick list, even though we have it written up above. Sometimes people want to be able to search for listings in a certain category or range. If somebody says, I don't really care if it's exactly 3, I want anywhere that's 3 to 10, for example. For the most part, these pick lists, as I call them, are in alphabetical order. So you can just go through and find what you're looking for this way. Usually other and none are at the bottom though. And again, depending on how much you're zoomed in, you may have to scroll back and forth. So just make sure sometimes that this could be completely invisible and you're not sure it's over there. So have a look and scroll and see if your gray scroll bar is there at the bottom. 2-level or 2-story. Just respect, like I said, those maximums that we want paved. Just going to choose some ones that are quite often the most used. Year-round municipal road. Here is the other waterfront features section. Remember on the first page when I said, don't forget to check waterfront yes if it's yes. This is the other field. Warning, warning. If you have a waterfront property or a water view property, do not miss making pick list selections under waterfront features. So, and you can choose up to 8. This is New Brunswick. We have some of the most beautiful waterfront anywhere and water view. So make a pile of selections up to 8. That water frontage, maybe you also want to say whether it's water view. Sometimes the two don't go hand in hand, as you know better than I. So I'm going to make a few choices, for example, and don't miss out on those. Land features. Maybe landscaped, scroll back over here. This is one where, unfortunately, I find this is the slower section because tabbing doesn't really help here. Tabbing would take you through each one of these fields, you know, so it probably is better to get your mouse out here. So I always found if I ever enter data, the pick list I hate because mouse, click, click, click. And it can take a long time, but I'm talking about because those are days in June when you guys are hitting us with listings all day long. When you're just entering yours, you're probably treating it like a newborn baby, and every little button and click, you're happy to make sure it's exactly right. And remember, you can save as incomplete at any time. Put this away, go back and get it and open it up and keep working on it over and over, and later add the photos until it's ready to send to the board and activate, which we'll talk about later. So I'm just going to go through. Remember, I said again before on page 1, there was garage information. Here, you want that to be duplicated. Even though it seems like a duplicate, I would definitely put it here. This is not a mandatory field because the other one's there. But if you miss this opportunity and somebody's using this pick list as the means to identify only properties with garages, your property with garage won't turn up in the search. So make sure you've got it filled out. Just to fill in all the fields. That's the best way to do it. Then your listing will always come up in all the required searches. So water, maybe I want to say it's a well, but we are on municipal sewer. Flooring, maybe we've got some ceramic, carpet, maybe a bit of wood. And the heating, I want to say there's an air exchanger, maybe it's a heat pump, that it is ducted. And maybe I've got a deck. Maybe I've got an above ground pool. I'm just making choices that, remember I said all of these fields are by and large in alphabetical order. Here's one exception. Under the rental equipment, we put the water heater up front and first because it's usually the piece of equipment that is forgotten to be checked off. And if you don't remember when you leave the property whether there's rental equipment and you mean to check later, it's usually because there's a water heater and then you forget about it. So this is to helpfully serve as a quick way to grab it and remind you that you should check that, and also that it is a mandatory field and it's one of the most common pieces of rental equipment. Over here to documents, I just want to show you though, this field a lot of people don't use. I would only use it if I were you when I intend to attach to the listing those documents that are checked off here. So for example, property disclosure condition statement, or property condition disclosure as we called it up above, it's PCDS. I would only check it off here if I'm intending to actually append and attach it to this listing. If I don't check it. It's enough to say up front PCDS yes, and you'll see it when you see it. Unless you're going to attach it, leave that blank. So the directions field, just gonna catch my notes up. So these are physical directions to get to the property. This is useful in particular if it's really an unusual or rural property that your GPS can't easily find. Remember though, this field is not informal or anything that you should take for granted. You can fill in anything with bad spelling or grammar, or write something like this is where Kmart used to be or Zellers used to be or something. This field uploads to realtor.ca. So anybody who's not familiar with our area is going to see what you write here. Any person who's a potential client is going to see what you write here. So let's keep it nice and tidy with good punctuation and spelling. Something like that for our office. French directions, just like the French overview. If you have French directions, put them here. If you have English as well, one in each. If you want it to be only in French, French in both. And if you don't have French, leave it be. Inclusions, I would just encourage you to use the pick list wherever possible, because these are formally mapped to realtor.ca so that it'll come up nicely with realtor.ca and selections there. Otherwise, if you have something unusual, like maybe, you can type it there. And then exclusions, of course, is always, because we have no idea what they're going to exclude. So that's always a text field. So remarks for Realtor View. So this field is obviously, as it says, it's for Realtor View only. So maybe what you want to put here is offers will be presented February 3rd at 5 p.m. Something like that. It's up to you. You don't need to repeat all the overview that you had up top into this, which is sometimes what people used to do with our former Philogic system, if anybody remembers that word, but totally unnecessary here. This will not print off in client view. It'll only print off in Realtor View. So the virtual tour links, you can have the option to put in 2 virtual tours here. So maybe you've got a spot on your website where there's more photos, and maybe the other one is a spot where there's an actual walkthrough or YouTube video. What you can do here is open a new tab, go find the virtual tour here, copy and paste the link, and then right click and paste it right into that field. So the one thing that I want to say here, don't be tempted by putting your website here and using this as another opportunity to get clicks on your website. Because if you think about, let's try to always think like the buyer who's starting their search, has clicked on your listing on realtor.ca, is over the moon excited that this could be their dream home. Oh boy, there's a virtual tour link. I'm going to click on it and it takes me to your webpage and your face is on it. I'm going to be mad at that face. All we want to have in these boxes is what it says. So if someone's being promised a virtual tour, no bait and switch, it's got to be a virtual tour. So if anybody sees virtual tours that are not quite properly linked in Matrix, let me know and we'll address and adjust those. But let's get the right info in there to begin with. This MLS Publish Date. So remember I said you can enter your listing, save it as incomplete, keep saving it, and only send it to the board when you're ready. Well, the only date that you can put on this is today's date. So maybe I don't intend to send it until next week, but it doesn't let you future date because it's too confusing for the system to try to calculate certain things that we need to do behind the scenes. So I'm just going to put today's date on it. Then when I'm ready to send it to the board and send my paperwork into the board, I'm going to open this up, make sure that this published date is either the date that I'm sending it, that it's going to go live, or, well, it's always going to be that date, because the other option is on clause 7B on your listing agreement. You can future date a listing and specify the date that you want it to be published on MLS. So if you put that date, send it to us that date and update it to that date on that date. The one thing that you can't do, a lot of you are really familiar with the board's rule that you have to get the listing to us within 72 hours of when you received it signed from the client. That's great if there's no clause 7B date specified. Anytime there's a date in there, you don't have 72 hours after that date. You don't. You have just inserted that date as the official MLS publication date, and now that's a term of the contract. So if it says it's going to be published on MLS on January 26th, it has to be. And if you get it to us after that date, we have to reject the listing because you've been in breach of a term of the contract that you and the seller have committed to. Then your option is to fill out an amendment to the listing agreement, submit that to the board with the new date. The important thing to know is that with workflow that we've observed over the 16 years now that I've been with the board, is that listings tend to come in packs. There's always the after lunch pack. There's a 10 a.m. pack, usually an after lunch pack, and a 4 o'clock pack. So there's a huge influx of listings that come in around 4. Yes, we're only going to be activating them now, but if everybody sends in, and I know we don't have a lot of listings right now, but I'm hoping the market's going to come back and we're going to start to get more in the spring. But it may not be, if you send it in to us very late in the day, we may not be able to get all of them activated. So make sure you send it. I would suggest 4 o'clock is a good buffer. Don't send it any later than 4 if it has to be activated that day, because the data entry desk typically shuts down at 4:30. Sometimes we'll push and I'll be around to do things a little bit later. I've been known to do things once in a while on a weekend or an evening if someone's near tears, but we don't, sometimes can't be reached, and it's not a good practice. So obviously, the expiry date on your listing agreement is going to match to that, and we'll make sure of that through our QA or quality assurance checks, but it's going to be at least 60 days from the commencement of the publication date. Calling expired permitted, most people, 99.99% of people put no here. That also follows, I think it's clause 27 on your listing agreement, that one with the big box around it that most people say no to. Now, publish to public sites, you might as well set this to yes, because this field and the next two are pretty much overridden from your hands by selections that your manager makes with their DDF or data distribution facility dashboard. So the manager decides on behalf of the company whether their listings are going to be published up to public sites and through the DDF or not. So by and large, these fields you can't really do much about. The big one here is whether or not you want to show it on realtor.ca, yes or no. If you say no to this, it remains active in the system, but it doesn't go up to realtor.ca, obviously. And an application of this would be if you have maybe like a bed and breakfast or a restaurant listing where they're afraid that the clients they don't want people to publicly see this, just find me a realtor that has a client and please, I don't want it to be public. But the other application might be if you co-list with a Moncton realtor, for example, they put it in their system, you put it in yours, because maybe it's in one of those Petitcodiac areas in between. But if both of you upload it to realtor.ca, it looks like we don't know what we're doing because there's two of them and they look a little different. And so one of you should choose no to that. So that's what that's for. We're going to set the pending active flag to yes, because this is pending active. Now, as I said a couple times, you're going to be opening this, saving it as incomplete as many times as you want until you're happy with it and it's all done. When does the board know, though, that it's time for activation? Because what we have at the board level on our home screen is a My Board's Incomplete Listing list. So there's a big long raft of incomplete listings. How do we know when it's time to activate yours? Well, it's easy. We're still following the email route. So as soon as we get an email, and it's either a fax to email because you use a fax machine and it converts to an email at our end, or you have scanned, and attached your PDF, or you've used a digital signing tool. And in any case, your listing comes in by email. When we get that, and only then, do we go looking for it in incomplete, and then we activate it. So prior to activation, we're going to check all the fields to make sure they're present, accounted for, are following board rules, and match exactly your listing agreement. So our quality assurance is not to make sure that your fields match a data sheet, because we wouldn't know whether it's hardwood floors on the data sheet, but it says laminate on what you've put on the screen. That's not what we're interested in. What we're interested in is that everything's following the board rules, that the commission, all of the key fields from the listing agreement match, grammar and spelling looks good, everything looks polished, the photos are there, the overview's there, everything is in accordance with rules, code of ethics under the New Brunswick Real Estate Agents Act. Those are the things we're doing. And so once we've got that, we're going to say yes, and we're going to activate it. So in the meantime, even though this beautiful navy blue button with the big green check mark is tempting, you cannot submit a listing. Nobody can do that except the board. So you're going to save it as incomplete. Prior to doing that, you might want to do this, validate. Remember I said I'm going to skip this field to show you what happens? Well, here's what happens. It shows a little red exclamation point, and that exclamation point red button appears on the tab for the page where the error is. So I can either click it here to find it and scroll down and look for the error, because here it will be, shows me with this little danger sign that I've missed it. If I can't find it, if I'm scratching my head and wondering what the problem is, I can also open it here. Above grade square footage is required. It's also reminding me, it will do this every time, that you don't have the permission to set change status. You know that. So I may try to get them to fix that and change that and take it away, because it's going to give you that error every time when you set that pending flag to yes, but that's what you're doing. It's just reminding you that it's not active really. So then I close that. I say, okay, you're right. Dope. I missed my above grade square footage. Now I've got it in. So now I'm done. I can save as incomplete. Done. I've got an MLS number. At this point, I can either, oh, I made a mistake. I accidentally put my name in the overview. I can hit continue editing and it opens right up again. Or I can add some supplements if I want to add any neighborhood map or property extra information or something like that. Can't be, again, it can't be information that is about you or branding or marketing you, but I can also add my photos from here. So this gives me the option to import photos from another listing. That might be if I have, like I said from the outset, if I had the listing before, I can grab the photos from my former listing, or if I have a duplicate listing in another category, maybe I've already got the multifamily and I want to pull photos off of that. As long as my name is on that listing, then I can pull it. Otherwise, you can't pull anybody else's photos in an automated way. You also can't right-click help yourself and save the photos and upload them from somebody else, because there's Canadian copyright laws which will govern that practice. So if you ever want to use someone else's photos, no matter what the seller tells you, seller always said, that's my property, those are my photos, don't listen, because the photos belong to the artist who took them. Or for whom they were taken. If you had a photographer take them and I paid that photographer, those are mine. So that's what you're certifying to, that you're not stealing anyone's images without permission. So we're going to upload the listings by browsing to our machine. And I just happened to pull off a whole bunch here. I can hold down Shift and select the whole file of them if I want all at once. It's just a Windows thing. Hit open. Oops. And it's going to take me a moment. I guess my internet connection is a little slow today. And as I said that, it told me my internet connection is unstable again. Do I hear a question?
I was just going to say you're breaking up.
Am I? Okay. Maybe what I'll do is let's just pause for a second. I think it's because the photos are uploading.
Yeah.
Okay, just give it a moment. Normally photo uploading is much faster than this, so there is something slow. There's something going on with our connection today. So I guess, can you hear me right now? All good?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, okay, good. The photos are up. Notice a couple things. Some of these photos are outlined in red, lower than the recommended minimum. Remember, I was telling you, you should have gigantic, glossy, huge photos that you're uploading to realtor.ca. Make sure they're as large as possible. If you're getting this message, it's because your photo is too compressed. You'll see that when you look up older listings from our system from a long time ago, it's those annoying tiny photos because we used to have to compress those. These, I'm getting this message because I just ripped a couple photos off the internet for the sake of this demonstration. But of course, as you probably know, you can drag these in any direction you want. Maybe I want the backyard last. A lot of people don't do this, which is put the little descriptions underneath. So that's a nice little place to do a little bit of marketing. But you know where it also helps is if you have a multi-unit, you might want to say owner's suite, master bedroom, second suite, so that you can differentiate which kitchen. I think that would be a useful place. But benefits like great landscaping, like any kind of marketing phrase, for example, on any of them, and certify and save. So the reason I have 5 photos on this listing is because you have to have a minimum of 5 photos for any residential home before the board will activate it as of February 1st. So make sure you've got those. Just consulting with the notes here to see if I've missed anything. That's everything I wanted to cover. So I open it quickly. We're just on the 1 hour mark, but is there any questions before we end the session today? You can either type them in the chat or just speak right up and unmute yourself if you have any questions.
I have a couple, Angela.
Sure. Who is that? Melanie?
It's Melanie. Yeah.
Hi, Melanie.
Hello. Okay. Back on the measurement side of things, when I saw you doing your entry, you were just doing 12 by 8, etc. And we'd all love it if room measurements were exactly like that, but they're not. So is there the option to put it in a decimal form, and or what about putting it in as feet and inches?
Yeah, I recommend strongly that you put it in with decimals and do the math to make sure that that's right, because 10 foot 6 inches is 10.5, right? Like you've got to make sure you do that. You guys are much better math. I don't like. And yes, in my world, I can make nice round numbers because I'm just doing this for an example, but you're absolutely right. Put the decimal. Once you've done this with the foot 6 inches, that might upload properly, but I get very wary of that because there's funny little things about these quotation marks. If anybody's ever noticed when their overview goes up to realtor.ca, sometimes it'll come out with a funny little mark where quotation marks should be. And that's because some quotation marks, there's special names for them that's escaping my mind right now. Some tilt and some are straight, and computers read them different ways. So my strong recommendation would be to use the decimals and the numbers that way.
Okay, because some that I've seen in the past, I've seen where somebody's put in 14.1, and I think it's actually 14 feet 10 inches. And so that's why I was wondering. And then I feel that could lead to a potential problem for somebody, right? I prefer to the decimal system, and I don't mind doing the conversion. So that's great.
Perfect. And the board will check that. Like, you know what, I probably should check to make sure of the feet inches. Like sometimes it depends on the type of keys that you have and how this is going to be entered with the tilting of those marks, but I'll look into that. I'll check, and if there's anything that we can do to change that, to streamline it, we'll make that change, because we're trying to get everything totally streamlined before February 1st here.
And just another quick question. I sort of missed, and I think it was my connection on my end, when you were talking about the section unlock boxes, and you mentioned something about Northern and Valley and a cutout, and I'm in Northern, and so I'm interested.
Yes, I think because you're a member who's had this key app on your phone or wanted it at different times.
I want it.
You want it, well, you got it. All you have to do is contact the board office after this session. Northern and Valley members will all be able to download the key app, and we'll activate it. And you can have it in an ongoing way without having to upload it just temporarily anymore, the way we used to.
Okay, and what is the fee for that, Angela?
No fee, no fee. The board has decided that you are a member like our members in St. John, and we worked it right into our budget this year. So it's part of our budget and no charge.
Okay, so can I ask this question then?
Sure.
So as a member, and I know this deviates a little bit, it's related but adjacent, I guess, is so if I wanted to purchase lock boxes, if everybody can use this for free now,
yeah,
I can purchase lock boxes?
Well, let's burn that bridge when we get to
Okay.
it. What I want to do right now, I have a vote from Northern members that it was sort of 50-50 split. 50% said no, and then the other half were undecided or in favor of. So before we do that, this is now just to open boxes that are being hung in your, or if you're visiting, but that is the next ultimate step. But I need to have a swell of support from the members in those regions before we do that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I see that there is a question in the chat. For residential, we'll need 5 photos. What about the other categories? For example, land, one photo. Now that's the minimum, remember. We want hundreds, well, 50. So as many as you can, but yes, you're right. There's only 1 required for any other category. It's 5 for residential. Any other questions? Last chance.
I have a question, Angela.
Sure, absolutely. Who am I speaking to? Paul.
Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, how you doing? Thank you so much. It was very informative. I have a question about a process about your cross property listing. Like if I have a property that's residential and multifamily, what's the process of submitting that to the board when there's going to be 2 MLS numbers? Do I submit the same listing agreement, or what's the proper way to do that?
That is such an excellent question. I'm glad you asked that, because the one thing I probably should mention, when you send your listing agreement to the board, if there's any ambiguity, any uncertainty about what listing you're trying to activate, like let's say you have a pile of land listings and you only want half of them to go, or I would jot the MLS number specifically that you're referring to, either in the subject line of the email or the email body, or if you're going to fax, just scratch it right down on the front of the listing. So to your question, yeah, if it's going to be 2 different versions of the listing, if you want residential and multifamily, then put in each category and put both MLS numbers. I would definitely not expect the board to notice that. I would point it out and say, please activate 2 listings and put the both MLS numbers, or just put, please activate the multifamily and the residential, just to alert us to the fact that 2 are there. Because when we're going quickly, especially in the spring, summer, we'll grab one up, that one's done. If we just think it's for 1 listing, we won't know.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anything else? Oh, I see that the chat has blown up here. What do we got? So where it says estate sale, I noticed that it would only give us 1 choice. Let me have a look at that. Let's do that again. So we're going to start with a blank listing. And that's the occupancy, no, the title. Is that what you mean? The estate sale? Yes. So if it's an estate sale, you can choose, make that selection here. It's only one of these options that you can choose from the drop down. Sometimes I do understand there's confusion over that. Like maybe it's an estate sale, but you're going to be getting it freehold. So sometimes both things are true. If that's the nature of your question, I think I would choose freehold if that's the opportunity. They're purchasing it freehold. And then I would put in public information. I'd mark it in there that it's an estate sale. And that might be obvious too from the seller if it's in the seller's name. Maybe it's not though. But anyway, that you think that's important for people to convey, whether it's realtor remarks or public, make it clear through the other means. I hope that answered. If not, please follow up either by calling me or type another question in the chat. To fix photos, Frank's asked about fixing photos that are outlined. Unfortunately, if the photo, okay, wait a sec, there's a couple things. Sometimes it is unfortunate if, let's say, somebody's taken photos and then emailed them to you. Let's say you sent an assistant or a team member out. They use this beautiful iPhone that we all seem to have. For Android probably does the same thing, but I'm not sure. When it takes a photo and you go to insert it in an email, it naturally compresses it so that it can be helpful to not send gigantic files through email. And that can be a problem because it's compressing the photo down to a size that isn't gigantic and glorious. So the one way would be to do that would be once you get the phone back to the office, say, well, this one's outlined in red. It stinks. I want a bigger, larger, more glorious photo. So then you're going to have to use the phone like with an iPhone cord, or maybe you have it set so that all your photos go into Dropbox or go into iCloud or something and get it out of there. That would be the only other way. Maybe the photographer if you have a photographer, talk to the photographer to make sure that their settings are maxed out, that they're not thinking still like the old settings we used to have or compression. Don't ever accept them from email. This is mostly why we're getting out of the business of having you email us photos, because they're always going to be compressed. Try to get them either from a Dropbox or cloud storage where they're uploading in full size and just re-upload them again. So you can't fix the one that's uploaded. It's just the size and the dimensions of the photo. You have to replace it. And hopefully that doesn't mean you got to go retake the photos. So Lise, would you think you could unmute, maybe explain, you mean for a bank sale? So that would be a power of sale selection, I think. If I'm correct, that's what you would use for that, power of sale. Otherwise, sometimes, you know what I've heard members do, that they're searching, they do a search on any company sale that is a company seller, so that they can try to weed out which ones are bank sales, and then they pick out bank names from that. So, oh, she said you answered my question. Okay. So there, I think we've covered everything and then some. There's some good questions extra there. Anything else before we wrap up? You stayed a little bit late, but hopefully it was for some bit more useful info with the questions. Well, thanks for your time. Thank you very much. 634-8774 is my direct line. 634-8774. Anybody can call me right after this or anytime, really. And if you have anything you want to discuss or any specific questions. Do I hear somebody? Sounds like they have a question.
No, I was going to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I got somebody unmuted. I couldn't tell who it was. You're welcome. Happy to do it. This is the last session. You guys are the ones that were recorded, and this is the one that anybody who missed the sessions is going to see too. So say hello to everybody who's learning after today. And hopefully everybody will be good to go February 1st, but we're always here to support and help at any time and answer any questions. Call anytime. Take care. Thanks, everybody.